Live from the internet, it's the Localhost podcast with Mark Drew and Rob Dudley.
Hello from the internet and welcome to episode 4 of the Localhost podcast, a podcast where we discuss everything and anything related to web development and surrounding topics. In this episode, we'll be talking about working for the man and handling the responsibility of going it alone. I'm Rob Dudley, and I've contracted the services of Mark Drew, who will hopefully be able to deliver on spec and on deadline all of the required work that goes into the Localhost podcast.
Hello, Rob. How are you doing?
Hi, Mark. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm enjoying sunny Greenwich. How's sunny Jersey?
Sunny. It is very sunny. I mean, this is exactly the kind of day when you want to be sat inside recording.
Well, it's perfect. It's a perfect day for sitting inside recording. So we're going to get on the job today. We're going to talk about everything to do with working and the variety of ways that we work, aren't we?
We are.
But I think before we get into the show, I think we should do a full disclosure bit. Because if we're going to be talking about different ways of working, such as being an employee or a contractor, we should say what we do, because we might have a different perspective than most people on it.
I think what we do, and potentially a little bit of what we've done, because, I mean, been around a while.
Yeah.
So do you want to go first? What do you do, Mark? What do you do?
Right. Well, I don't want to make this into a major plug, but I run a small company called Command, which is a consultancy. We do web development for various people. We do consultancy on how people should do web development. We also build and maintain existing sites for various clients. So rather than being, so I'm kind of my own boss and I hire some people that work with me to deliver that kind of stuff. So yeah, a kind of different situation of being employed by a mega corporation. How about yourself, Rob?
Currently, I am a CDO of a tech startup. Prior to that, co-founder and CTO of a tech startup. So I've been doing the startup thing for a bit, which means you get all of the pain of being freelance and none of the fun. No, it's very rewarding, honestly. I've also, done my time in the big dev teams. I have worked for Megacorp, or at least the closest thing we have to that in Jersey.
What's the closest thing that you can have to a mega corporation in Jersey?
It's kind of like 120, 150 people. That's what counts as a large enterprise on the island of Jersey.
OMG. Well, I've worked for some companies that went from being, when I joined, I think there were 12 people and expanded to about 300 people in the period of about 3 years. This is the dot-com boom years, of course, which is kind of interesting being in part of a company where you all know each other's names, you'll go down the pub, you'll socialize with each other because, you're in your 20s and that's where you spend most of your buck that you earn during the day, to a company where there's people wandering in and out and they have suits and you're wondering what is people in suits doing at this company, and they're actually people that work there and you've never met them. It's kind of an interesting situation to do that.
You can always tell it's when you've got a marketing department and a HR department. That's when you know you're in Megacorp land.
Right. I mean, to be fair, I think our accountant was our HR department at one point. I don't want to get this wrong, but yeah, it's when you start getting a whole department on how to manage the people that actually exist rather than to deliver anything. It kind of gets interesting then. I think a good balance is about 30 people. I don't know how big your company is, but I think if I grow a company, it would be about that size. I think that's a good balance. Maybe the listeners can tell us whether they work for a company with about 30 people, if that's the right social makeup.
I think we'll probably get into this again in a little bit, but I think it's more, you can have the biggest company in the world. It's all about team size.
Right.
That's what makes the real difference. And I'd stick to, is it Bezos? Is two pizza?
What? Really?
Yeah. You must have heard this, the two pizza team. Any team that's larger than can be fed comfortably with two large pizzas is too big.
Have you seen the pizzas in New York? They're massive. I mean, that's a huge team. It's like if you get your little Domino's around here, that feeds me.
One of those little frozen ones you pop in the microwave. It's
right.
That's
a tiny.
I think I'm going to eat both of those.
Yeah, you can imagine his confusion when it comes to like really small 2-man teams. Like, well, you said pizza. Yeah,
and he wasn't very hungry anyway.
Yeah. But so yeah, so that's a good thing about working for the man, right? Having a good sized team, social team. So let's talk about the. So what do we mean by working for the man? I mean, it's or woman. I mean, by the way, you can work for that was a capital T, capital M, Johnny Cash reference, I think.
Maybe.
But
well, basically, we're talking about working for a large-ish organisation, right? This is, to be honest, where a lot of people will start potentially their careers. They'll go into a larger organisation. You have a manager, and it's possible that he or she has a manager, and there's people at the top who you see floating around but never really engage with. So it's about being an employee.
Right. And that has got some really lovely benefits of that, including the benefits that you get from the benefits, such as dental, medical, and whatever they've offered you, sort of shares and a cat and a petting zoo and back rubs or whatever big companies can afford to keep their employees happy.
And some of those benefits, depending on the company, can be amazing. You could get, you look at take the whole mega Google idyllic approach where you've got this campus set up and they've got free organic lunches, massages, and all the rest of it, right the way down to probably the more communal garden where you get a pension that's a bit shit, and maybe a dental plan that basically covers one filling every 4 years.
Right. But I mean, having said that about those kind of lunches benefits, I've been reading recently there's a lot of backlash amongst them because... and I can't remember the company, and I'm not going to name and shame, but they had like evening dinners if you're working late. But now it became a thing that basically being exclusive because that benefit can only be given to people that have to stay back and not see their families. And there's a bit of a backlash against this overworking in the States. But yeah, so that is a benefit. You get your free food, your organic food, your canteens, which means that you don't ever leave your office and you always... make sure that you're not too far from your desk. But having said that, compared to London, which in my experience has been, you go around the corner and get your floppy sandwich and you go back to your desk to eat it in like a space of 20 minutes. And then, no organic lunches for me. In my experience, anyway.
Maybe you need to go and get a proper job.
I don't think I'm employable anymore. So the other pros apart from organic lunches are kind of regular wages, right? So you know that at the end of the month you're going to get whatever money that that all your taxes are going to be paid. That you can, hand on heart, go to the taxman at the end of the year and going, all I have earned is what this company has given me, and they sorted out the tax. So bugger off, Mr. Taxman.
Yeah, and it's handled for you. You get all of your national insurance. Everything is kind of dealt with, right? So, but the rub, that salary, that wage, is it realistically going to be as much as you could earn if you were freelance? Probably not.
I mean, there's a balance to this because having looked at a little bit about the mathematics about this, I don't want to go in there. You might earn, let's say, £50,000 from a company or whatever, but the company is actually paying about £60,000 for you because they put the taxes and they put the money aside for your holidays and everything else. So, you, in theory, even though you don't see that, that's how much you cost, right? As a resource. So you could possibly earn that. So whenever you ask, I want to earn this because it looks good for me, selfish, the company says, all right, we have to give that plus anything else, plus, I don't know if they treat you like furniture plus depreciation or whatever of your skills.
It's been 5 years, Mark. I'm afraid we've had to write you off.
Yeah.
But actually, that's another thing. You often get, equipment provided and what have you as part of this kind of role.
Yeah.
So, and depending on the company, that can either be good equipment or it can be like this 386 PC that they just give to the new guy every time.
I've noticed that's actually
95.
Right. I think that's been a massive benefit for some companies because as a developer, you want to have the good kit. And the good kit doesn't cost that much in comparison to the rest of your wages, right? So giving someone like, I know I'm going to get like abuse about this, let's say a brand new MacBook Pro compared to that old 386 can be seen as a greater benefit than it is in cost, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, you've got them tied in. You know that they're happy, they're productive, they've got the machine they want, and it goes to things like some of the companies I'm aware of offer quite a generous hardware package.
Right.
Not
hammer.
a phrase I thought I'd be saying
at
at this time on a Saturday morning.
Right, a nice hammer, screwdriver.
Well, no, but you get the state-of-the-art laptop, you get the nice, latest shiny smartphone, and they're flexible. They'll let you kind of choose and what have you. But often, realistically, this is an upfront spend of what, $3-4 grand,
Right.
But yeah, like you say, in the general scheme of things, that's a fraction of what they're going to be paying you anyway. So it makes sense to make sure that you're a happy little camper.
Right. I mean, there's the different incentives that they can make. From back rubs on massages, because obviously you're sitting crouched like a crow over your desk coding away all day. But of course the other one is holidays, right? So that you can get, as part of your deal, you get 20 or 25 days. I'm sorry, Americans, we get quite a lot of holiday in the rest of the world, really. It's just you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, we appreciate the need to be able to kind of go away for more than a long weekend.
Right. And you get other benefits. And of course, the big one, I think, now as time goes on, is the social element, right? Because normally when you work for a big company, I'm just saying there are exceptions to the rule, but you are working in an office, right? You are working with other people, and you get that social element, which as social creatures is kind of also a benefit.
Yeah, so going out, whether it's going out with the rest of the company or even just with the rest of your team, they're often potentially subsidised, which is always nice. You get a few beers in on the man, and even if they aren't, it's just a really useful social element to working that you can actually go and socialise. And again, we have to balance it. You don't want to be spending all the time with the people you work with. But I know certainly when I was kind of getting started, and for a lot of people, I think this is still true, a large portion of their ongoing social circle and expansion of their social circle comes from work.
Right.
The friends that they make, that they keep. One of my oldest friends who I have over here, we met when I was temping. Fair enough, that job didn't stick around, but that friendship absolutely has.
Right.
So it's definitely something that needs to be factored in, I think, when you're balancing off the fact that you get to work with people. The opposite is also true. You will also have to work with some people that you just don't like.
And you have no option, because it's like, I don't want to work with them. Well, how about getting another job, right? And you're like,
So you have to kind of, you get quite good at dealing with the malodorous guy from accounting,
or any other department. We're not hitting on accounting.
It's normally no, we're not.
I mean, the other side of it is that a lot of companies have to expand your skill set. As we talked last time, how do you become a good developer? The company has to, or generally does, do training. And even if it's not training, you're learning from other people around you. So hopefully you're not the smartest guy in the room. Hopefully there's other smarter people around you, like in the immediate vicinity, that you can leech information from and knowledge and improve yourself as well, which if you're not working for a big company, or if you're not working for a medium-sized company, you're not getting, right?
No, well, you'd have to go and seek out that kind of peer learning and knowledge transfer, and this goes back to what we were saying last time. You might spend probably a lot more time at user groups or what have you, whereas inherently as part of your team, unless you're unlucky enough to be the only techie in the village in a company, which can happen, you're going to automatically have somebody to bounce ideas off. You're going to be constantly bringing each other up to speed on cool stuff that you've discovered, but
there's a flip side to all this, though, I've got to say. So for, we say that we have holidays, right? But those are controlled in a way by the company, because if you go, I've got to change, I have kids and I need to go away on Easter holiday. Well, there's a project on. You have to, book it off 6 weeks in advance or 8 weeks in advance. The other one is that your hours are controlled. I used to have a very open contract, which is like, you should be in the office in working hours. And some companies are changing that a little bit to say, hey, here are the core hours. But I was present when a company changed that to say you have to be here from 9 till 6. And it was a media company that people used to work late to get stuff done, but then they'll come in a little bit late because, well, they'd been there till the 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock the previous evening. The moment the company changed that policy, suddenly I noticed a massive change in the attitudes of people. They were like, okay, fine. If I have to be here at 9, then I'm going to leave exactly at 6 on the dot. And I thought it was a very detrimental thing to the company. But that's what happens, is the company saying, you have to be here at this time and we'll tell you off. We might fire you if you're not here at this time.
This is it, and the HR department's now starting to get involved, and maybe somebody will start, some kind of punch-in, punch-out system. It's the beginning of the end, in my view.
Right.
But at the same time, flip it on its head. We're going to be doing a lot of balancing, I think, in this episode. The company does need to make sure that they've got cover, that there's people there to answer the phones, and it's almost easier to say, well, hang on a minute, those guys over there with the nice computers, they get to rock in whenever they want, and because we're here in customer service, we have to be here at 8:30.
Yeah,
it's often easier just to level it out.
Yeah, but the problem is that people in customer service don't see it. We're going to go, well, like the phone line's open from 9 to 5, and I'm afraid no one is here to take your call at 5 o'clock, right? But then there's a designer there still working, getting that PowerPoint presentation done for the CEO for his big presentation the next day till 10 o'clock at night. But no one sees that because they're down the pub drinking the social money, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's different for different types of company. It's different for different organizations. There's been quite a big push that I've witnessed towards this concept of like flexible time, and you can hear the core hours and what have you. The bigger thing for me has always been holiday. The fact that, as we'll talk about, if you are master of your own destiny, you can be like, you know what, it's a nice day today. I'm just going to get up and go to the beach. You don't have that if you're working for somebody, if you're employed.
Or if you live in London.
Well be, sorry?
Or if you live in London, we don't have a beach.
There's Brighton. Isn't Brighton 30 minutes on the train or something?
Yeah.
See, I know things.
You have a podcast that is knowing things and being drunk.
No. We're not plugging the podcast again. We do. It's amazing. Yeah. But anyway, whereas, the other thing that you'll often find is you're restricted by other people's actions. It's like, okay, well, I want to go on holiday in July. I want to take a week off because it's my birthday. It's like, oh, no, you can't. Why not? Because Steve and Amy are already off.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch, Steve.
Yeah. Exactly.
But that's it. That's the reality of it. You just have to kind of play within the rules.
I mean, and even if you're a contractor or run your own company, you have to make sure that you have some kind of cover, right? So we're always like selling our time or our efforts to do this. So
yeah,
I think there's other downsides for companies that I think are not quite obvious. And I wanted to do an episode. Maybe we should do an episode about open source. And this is where I was getting this from. Is that the IP? Maybe we won't do an open source.
No, that would be amazing face. Sorry, facial expressions on a podcast work beautifully well. We should definitely do an episode on open source, but you were getting on to a very important point. Go on, IP.
Yeah, the IP, the intellectual property of your product when you work for a company, depending on your contract, but generally it's all owned by the company. So anything you do whilst you're working for that company, and usually is whilst you're working is during the years that you work for that company. So even if you go home and do something, it's sometimes owned by the company unless there is a clause not to.
This is a huge thing, and I've had to do this for the past 2 employment contracts I've signed, which are to basically get exclusions added for open source projects and a couple of other bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. Not least of which because, frankly, I mean, they could try and claim that they own WordPress because I contributed some documentation one time. Yeah. I don't think that's going to fly very well. But at the same time, this is the one thing that, again, companies do it because it's really easy just to put in this catch-all clause into the contract. Yeah. And they do need to protect themselves. They want to make sure that they own anything that you create. But the one area of employment that sticks in my craw is the really, really heavy-handed IP grab clauses where it's like, we own everything you make.
Right.
You want to have kids? We own them.
Well, they're
technical
intellectual
IP.
property, right? It's intellectual property that's inside those kids, not the kids themselves, right?
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, the nice thing is that I've always found that most companies, that's the one area where they kind of go completely nuclear out of the box, right?
Right.
We own everything. It's the one area where they're normally happy to have a conversation about, okay, we can probably work around this.
Yeah.
Use the word deal breaker when you're talking to them, and they'll probably rework it. If they won't, you have to ask yourself, is that the kind of company you really want to work for?
Right, because we talked about this in the previous podcast, and the people that you kind of want are the people that are interested in technology, that are doing open source projects, that are doing those things. Because those are good employees, they're good developers, they're going to add to your company. And if you have a contract that says you can't do that, you can only work on our stuff, then you're not going to attract those people. So you have to have that kind of dialogue. But this is also a warning for open source companies that what they have to do is have a contributor agreement that actually, because a problem comes if you want to change licensing for an open source project from MIT to Apache or whatever the change is, it means that you have to go and see that all the contributions have been made with, even if it was you, Rob, doing it. Let's say WordPress wanted to change it and you've done that contribution, then they realize, oh, he was working for X company. We now have to go and get their permission to change our license, so, unless you've signed a contributor agreement saying that you're giving away the intellectual property.
And making sure that you can do that. That's the thing, because contractually, potentially, I can't.
Right, exactly.
So it's a minefield, right? And it's just one of those things to be aware of, as it's very easy when you're starting out just to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't care. They can have it, or they'll never use it. You have to think every successful product, platform, or service has started somewhere by somebody. Yeah. And do you really want to take the chance that that amazing idea that you have is not necessarily yours, or is going to be complicated or even stifled because you didn't read through and request an amendment to your IP clause? Yeah,
you should always look into that. I think this is such an important thing, maybe for me, because I'm into open source software and have a background in it, that you go, well, intellectual property is very important. Who owns your product? As freelancers, and I think external service providers, you can decide that because that's part of the contract that you're saying. So, for example, if you went to a company and they want you to build them a site, you build them a site, but say, hey, but the framework that I use to build the site, the JavaScript framework or the whatever framework, I'm keeping that. You paid me to build this, but you actually didn't pay me to build this. You paid me to build the site, which is what the framework did. So you can, as an example, so you can own that IP, but as an employee, you have to really read the contract, right? I'm not a lawyer, but read that contract. And going on, I think, to the final point that I can think of a con of working for a big company is that the company decides the tech that you're using. If you're really in love with a certain tech, if you're like a Java developer, a Cold Fusion developer, a PHP developer, or whatever, and the company usually for frivolous reasons decides that they're going to change technology. Usually it's because Microsoft have taken them out for lunch a lot, and now you're going to go into ASP.NET or something like that. It's been my experience. Microsoft say, we'll give all your licensing for free if you do everything in .NET because it's much better, and they're going to dump the technology that you love or the thing that you're interested in, and either you can like it and retrain, which could be very good because now you've got another feather in your bow, or lump it, or just quit, or you get made redundant because you're not a .NET developer.
It's not something that I've actually run across because most of the companies you normally know when you come in up front what they're using, but it's a risk, and it's everything. It's they suddenly decide that we're going to get rid of, for example, I use a Mac for development,
right?
Because I'm a developer.
Right.
No, sorry, that's very arrogant. But basically, I like it, what have you. The company could quite easily turn around and say, actually, we've just struck a deal with Lenovo. Everybody's getting new ThinkPads.
Right.
Great, okay, thanks. You've just completely shot my productivity in the foot. Or, we've got this new database provider. We're going to have to go in and retool. Or we've got, worst case, we're dumping this language that love for this language that you may come to know and love, but it's change, and we fear change.
Yeah, our primal lizard brain kind of like skitters away, going, not PHP.
Our Java programming, nobody ever changes to PHP. You change from PHP.
Right.
No, that's a serious thing, right? I'm a card-carrying PHP developer.
There's his card. It's pink. Right, yeah, it's a pink
My
elephant.
pink PHP elephant.
I'm literally seeing pink elephants.
But yeah, normally that's where some enterprise architect has come in and said, no, you've got to do this in Java.
Right.
But it's down to the fact that you don't really have control, and until you reach a certain point or a certain level inside those organizations, you may not even have a say. You're pretty much you show up, you do what you're told to do, whether that's which tools you use to code with, what you code in, or even who you're delivering the service to. I mean, I've parted ways with companies because they shifted markets to a market that I personally have a massive problem with. I'm not going to name names, but suffice to say, it wasn't illegal. It was just immoral.
Sure,
a little bit grubby.
Right.
And again, they say, we're going to be working with these guys now. And you're like, right, I don't agree with that. I'll see you later.
An acquaintance of mine, I don't want to say what kind of relationship I have with them, had a opportunity to work with a company, but they were very pro-gun, an American company, and he didn't want to work with them. So he's able to choose that, right? Because that's against his belief, right? If your belief is to carry guns, that's great, and you can work with a company with fine. But if you disagree fundamentally with what a company does, if you work for that company, it's out of the door. If that's the only way that you can vote, and that's by losing your job. One of the good things that we have in Europe, though, is that walking out of a company is, you have to give your notice and things like that. But it doesn't mean the end of the world apart from getting another job, right? In the US, if you do leave a company, it means the end of your healthcare. So it could be the literal end of the world, because you might have to have drugs that you need to take that if you quit one job and until you get to the next one, So I think there's kind of a harsher reality there for that. But
definitely the stakes, the risks, and the counterpoint are higher, I think, in the US. And it doesn't have to be the US. It could be, in the UK and Europe. But you've got a family of 2 kids and 3 dogs. If you've got dependents, then all of that stacks up and makes it much harder to just say, you know what, see ya.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say we're in a fairly lucky position, certainly in the UK, where you can probably actually, if it comes to it, you can just mic drop, quit, and provided you're half decent, get another job without too much of a road bump in your life. Yeah. So we've completely damned working for a company. Nobody's ever going to do that again.
Why would you do that? That's insane. I mean, one of the things that I come across is the strange rules, and the only way I can equate it is there was an experiment that I'll have to look up, which basically they had 3 monkeys in a room. And they always do experiments with monkeys, obviously. I talk to monkeys, now we have experiments with monkeys. And what they had was a ladder in that room. And anytime the monkeys got close to it, they would spray them down with water, which obviously the monkeys don't like. So what they did was remove one monkey from there. So 2 of them knew about the ladder and the spraying of water, and replace it with a fresh monkey that didn't know about anything about this. And the moment the new monkey tried to go next to the ladder, the other 2 monkeys beat him up, right, and told him not to do it. So eventually they replaced all the monkeys, and they wouldn't splash water. It's only the original monkeys that got splashed with water. So then a few generations down the line, they start replacing monkeys. And now monkeys that had no knowledge of why there would be any reason to not touch the ladder would still beat up the new guy that tried to touch the ladder. Now, I've encountered that in corporations of going like, I'm going to go and plug this in. It's like, no, don't do that. Why? Because don't.
Bad things.
Bad things. And I think that's the rules for wearing shorts in most companies, I think.
Oh, don't get me started on the dress code. Oh.
Yeah. So
can I ask a serious question? If anybody out there does actually have any evidence at all that tying a length of cloth around my neck makes me a more productive individual, please just send that on in.
Right.
No, I know it's about respect and all the rest of it, blah blah blah. But yeah, the indoctrination of fear, and it's more about company culture. The fact that you basically have to fit into the culture of that company, and that can be as big a stumbling block as anything. Because in some cases, you'll fit in just fine. They're a company that aligns with you, whether that's your views or your way of working, what have you. In other cases, no, there'll be stuff that's been handed down. And again, you can't change it because nobody even remembers where it came from. You are just the new monkey getting beaten up every day.
Right. So now what we can do is drop the mic, walk out the door, don't turn around now, say that the company's not wanted anymore. And what's your choice? You don't want to go and work for another company. So you can go freelance or self-employed or contractor, or you can make my own company with blackjack and hookers, as the bender said.
I was going to say, surely there's a week of just like sitting on the sofa, eating tiny pizzas, watching Rick and Morty box sets, right?
Right. Yeah.
And after that,
when the pizzas are running low, you think, what do I do next?
Need money to exchange for goods and services.
That's how it works.
So, freelancing, self-employment, all options. Getting another job, of course, is an option,
right?
But let's say that you've decided that you're gonna go it alone. You want to see what this freelance thing's all about. I mean, I've been there probably as a true freelancer. I've probably been there like twice in my life, so 2, give or take 1 year, and then 18 months the last time.
I think we should clarify what's the difference. What's the difference between freelance and a contractor? What I hear the word freelance a lot amongst mainly designers, or the more creative side, right? And contractor more along the lines of IT people that come in to do a contract for a specific amount of time. Is that what experience you have? I mean, because I've got a loose connotation from them.
I mean, contract is easy to define. It's exactly that. Somebody who works to a contract. They are contracted to deliver a piece of work. Normally, in IT terms, we see that as being where you're parachuted into an organization for 6 months, 12 months, whatever, to do this thing. Freelance, I've always seen as being slightly more flexible, because once you're contracted in, you're doing that thing, right?
Right.
So if you've got a 6-month contract, that's you for 6 months.
Gotcha.
You're not moonlighting. You're not doing anything else. You've still got to try and work out what you're going to do after 6 months. Sorry, 6 months and 1 week, because there's a new series and more tiny pizzas.
Right, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, freelancing I've always viewed it as you can have multiple work streams in parallel. You are basically managing your own client base.
Gotcha.
And sometimes that may involve a larger, chunkier piece of work that dominates time a la a contract.
Right. So someone that you parachute in to do a job, but not over a period of time, is to literally hit that production milestone.
Contract or freelance?
Freelance. It's like, hey, I want you to come in and design me the front page of our new super duper website. So that's a freelance job, right?
Possibly even, it's not even that you want them to come in. It's like, we need a new page for super duper website. Mm-hmm. Let's call this person. Mm-hmm. And they will do it. They will deliver it. They'll meet with us and what have you, but they're working from their own studio or their own office or their own bedroom, whatever. And they may well have other stuff going on at the same time. We don't own their time exclusively. Mm-hmm. We just basically want the work done.
So, and the situation with freelancers generally is that they're self-employed, right? So either, I'm saying generally, but we'll move on to the other side, which means that you don't have a company per se. You don't work under a brand. But you just say, I have earned this money, and Mr. Taxman, here's what I earn, and this is some tax I'm meant to give you, right? I've never been self-employed.
Your common setup will be you're a sole trader.
That's
the right term. Which means you're not part of a company. You haven't formed a company. You're just you working on your own. But that does mean that you're responsible for absolutely everything. You've got to make sure you maintain all your own accounts, even though you're not a company, because you still have to pay your taxes. You've got to make sure your social and national insurance element. Is that still a thing?
What's that?
National insurance?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Yeah. It's just I haven't been working in the UK for over a decade, right?
No, so that's how we pay for our NHS until let's get away from politics.
Yeah, let's move
run
very
away
quickly
away from that.
Politics Hour with Mark and Rob.
No. That'll be the most bleeped episode ever. It'll be like, when you have to say, is this podcast explicit? And we'll be like, yep, 100%. Yeah.
There is not a button or a category for how explicit this podcast is going to get if we start talking politics. So you're a sole trader. You're doing all of your taxes and accounting, and basically you've got all of the same responsibilities as running a large company, near as damn it, but it's all you.
Right, and the problem with that is that you're liable for everything, and this is why you create a company, because then you can limit the liability, right? I mean, you can get insurance that you can pay for the liability, but there is no cap of actual liability, and that liability is actually you. Because you are the provider.
Well, this is the common thing that you see, right? Yeah, by the way, nothing in this podcast constitutes legal advice, and I'd be a bit worried if you thought it did.
Yeah.
But
there are much better places to get legal advice from than us.
Try a lawyer or solicitor.
Yeah.
It's a common next step, though. You've gone freelance, and then actually you form your kind of limited company for a whole bunch of different reasons. And it might still just be you, and you might still be working out of your little second bedroom or your nice little studio somewhere. But there is now a limited company surrounding it, which makes some of it more complicated, and it costs a bit of money, but it also affords a lot of different types of protection.
Yeah.
And it gives you a lot more flexibility, because it means that you could potentially contract bits of work out if you wanted to, and you get this more structured organization to it.
There's also a small side that you have to be kind of careful as a freelancer, is that your behavior to the taxman cannot look like you're basically an employee on the cheap.
Yeah.
Right. So if you working freelance, and I'm doing air quotes, which you can't see, for the same company, doing a 9-to-5 job for a year, but not, but just for yourself, the taxman's going to start going, wait a minute, this is an employee by any other name, and why are you not paying PAYE? Why are you not giving this guy insurance? It's not a. So you have to be slightly careful on that kind of side. When you're a company, you have your own liability, you have your own insurance, you look like a separate entity. And usually what you're doing when you're working with your clients, you're not saying, I will provide Mark or Rob to you to do this job. You say, Bob and Mark Limited will do this job for you, and we're not saying who's going to do it. The company will do it. It's up to Rob and Mark Limited to provide this service or function, so it separates the person from the delivery of the service.
Yeah, 100%. Which means you've got a lot more flexibility if you need it. You could potentially sub some of the work out.
Right.
So yeah, it normally I'd say you do get freelancers who are still just running sole trader. But I'd suggest that anybody who's been doing it for a while will have taken the next step, which is to set up some form of company vehicle that they can drive around in.
I like the idea of a company vehicle that you drive around in. What is that, a 4x4? Yeah.
Yeah, and there are services in the UK as well, right? That let you do this quite easily. So there's what do they call them? Umbrella company services.
I use umbrella companies. They were pretty good. The only problem with umbrella companies is you get this trifecta of payment, which essentially becomes that you have usually a recruiter, and we haven't touched on recruiters yet, who becomes your agent into the company. So the company pays a recruiter, the recruiter pays the umbrella company, and the umbrella company pays you. So what before was, for example, if you started working at a company, a month later you'd send them your invoice, which the company would obviously now wait 30 days to pay it. Now you have to, after that 30 days, which is 2 months since you've actually, or 60 days since you've started working, it now goes, the agent's got the money, who now waits for the umbrella company to get it, and eventually the umbrella company gets it and pays you as if you were an employee. So an umbrella company is essentially, you're working for a company that doesn't care the hours or the jobs you do. They just handle the money and pay you and pay your taxes. That is quite a really good way when you're starting out in in a way, if you have the patience.
Yeah. And contractors realistically could also do the same thing, right? Not umbrella companies. They could you could be a contractor as a limited company, but that tends to be less common. I mean, I have to be a bit careful because contracting in this example is the one that I've not done.
Right. I mean, I have done it. I mean, essentially, it's you are a limited company. You're contracted by another company for a period of 3 months, generally, or 6 months, depending how long the project is. And they renew that contract happily or for another month, depending what you're there to do a job. And it is that thing that you have to be a company. You have to be protected. So this is why a lot of contractors have got actual limited companies. And when I say protected, you have to have public liability insurance, because in case you screw up, the company that you're working for will sue you, and you have to have that protection in place. And also, like, if they're going to sue you to oblivion, you have a liability that goes to the company, not to you. So you're not going to lose your house. You're going to lose your company. That company can be made bankrupt, but they're not going to come after you as a director. They're not going to. Yeah. They're not going to go and take your kid away because it's their intellectual property or whatever the penalty they're going to do. So that's the good protection. That's why it's also a good shield rather than an umbrella. There you go. We can have something for your head and something in front of you.
You're going to need a bigger company vehicle to get shields and umbrellas in there as well.
Yeah.
So I suppose, I mean, the obvious pros, the obvious benefits to being freelance, it's flexibility, right? You can work when you want, except you can't because you still have to get the job done. But it does mean that you can work by and large from where you want. If you wanted to say pop over to Florence, Italy for the weekend, you can just do that, chuck your laptop in the bag and enjoy delivering some work from a nice little cafe overlooking the Uffizi Gallery. I don't know.
That sounds lovely. I mean, I might go to a Jersey or something. That's really lovely.
Yeah, and even if you're not going halfway across Europe on some strange art quest, it might well be that a day like today you think, well, actually, I want to get out of my little second bedroom. I'm going to go and head down to a nice little cafe and do some work there, and that's all completely fine.
Right.
You can, if you're like me, you can work until 1-2 a.m. Or if you're like other people, you can get up at 5 a.m. and crack on, and nobody cares, right? Because they just want the work done and delivered.
Which I think is, and full disclosure, this is what we kind of do. Because we've got clients all around the world, it doesn't matter what time I'm working from, right? So I can set my schedule as long as we're delivering results, which is brilliant, right? I think it's brilliant. The good side is like, of running your own company is like, it's up to you. You decide on what to do. Of course, the downside is it's up to you. You have to make those decisions. You have to make decisions that might affect you in the future, and you don't know. But, when you're an employee, you didn't care because, the company made those hiring salespeople and getting new work in. And actually, we didn't touch on this, is how do you find the new work as a freelancer or as a company? You have to have some of those skills that are not directly related to your job, right? I'm not going to make a crass generalization on developers or the social skills, but I'm just about to. But we're not generally the most salesman-like people, generally. We're not business motivated. We're more into the technology, into the delivery of something, right? And now suddenly you have to change roles. You have to do a new thing. You are, hey, now I'm captain of industry and Mr. Network. Which previously you weren't.
And you've potentially got to do all of this at the same time, because if you've got
whilst you're working
projects that are running for 6 weeks, well, you're going to need to be kind of 2 weeks into that project starting to think, well, it might take me a month to land the next bit of work. I've got to spin this up. Right. So it can be. It's a tired analogy, but you are spinning plates constantly as a freelancer.
Yeah.
You're having to not only, and in some cases it can be actually, it's delivering and doing the work that suffers because you're that busy doing everything else. running around, keeping everybody happy and finding new work and what have you. It's like, there's something I'm forgetting. What is it? Oh, that's right, to do the actual job of the thing that I have to do.
And those
believe it or not,
and those overheads that you forget about because you go, yes, I'm going to be doing this. But if you're thinking, that money that I'm charging as a freelancer should also cover that week that I'm eating pizza and watching Rick and Morty and getting new work.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's what it should be covering, and this is why they're slightly more expensive. And companies don't get that. They go, well, I'll pay X amount for an employee, well, I'm paying X plus 10 for freelancers, because you actually have to. That's what you're paying for, and the ability to hire and get rid of somebody very quickly is the penalty that you're paying for that. What else? So there's some other good things that I remember about being a company. Oh yes, is the ability to actually hire other people. And here's the thing that we're talking about, not being very good at, sales, for example. But now what you can do is actually go and hire somebody to do the sales. You can, now the circle is complete. I can now hire a freelancer to come and give me those sales, do the things that I'm not good at. You can now, the same way that you hire an accountant to do your taxes, because you have to hire an accountant to do your taxes, that any moment that you're doing freelance or company stuff, you hire people that do stuff better than you. Yeah.
And you've got the flexibility to do that.
But it's a hard one, I've got to say, as having experienced this, it's really hard to hire, to delegate some stuff. You try to do it to a certain point, and when you get to a point, you go like, actually, the moment you learn how to delegate stuff and manage people that are doing it, and know how much time you should dedicate to that delegation, once you've got that, it actually it makes things a lot easier. But it takes time.
It takes time, and it's another thing. It's another plate.
Right.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this, but honestly, finding the right person, especially if it's a competitive role or what have you, and especially if you're also then thinking, well, hang on a minute, I've got to hire this person. They're an employee, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want somebody freelance, but they're going to want some kind of retainer. It's like, can I afford to do this? Do I have enough long-term cash flow? And I've got to interview a whole bunch of people, and that's yet another thing that I'm doing. So it is amazing. It's a next step. It's an amazing thing that you can do. But a lot of the time, you'll be sat there. It's another thing to worry about.
Well, I think maybe this is another topic on getting things done and not just being good, but being able to actually deliver stuff. We've come up with 2 new topics. There we go. Getting stuff done and open source. Right, that's going to be on the list of things that we're going to talk about next. But if you're wandering around worried about stuff, I make a good suggestion of being able to offload it from your brain very quickly. Put it on something else to worry about, like put it on a list or things that that you'll be getting to do. So delegation of work is fantastic, but then you have to manage that delegation, right? So make a list of saying, hey, manage the delegation. I have a whole bunch of reminders that some of them were going off during our recording that tell me, okay, do this now, right? Because every day you want to do, a check-in on this. So now I wander around like a brainless zombie because I don't worry. I just wait for the reminder to go do this. It's much easier. I program the world to tell me what to do. So I'm a slave to machinery.
The world is your PA.
Yeah, exactly.
If anybody ever hacks your smartphone, iPhone, if anybody ever hacks your iPhone, they can have such fun.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not sure why. I'm stood in the middle of Reading Roundabout with no trousers on, but the phone told me to, so it must be right.
Yeah. Well, that was last Wednesday. Have you been looking at my to-dos? Yeah.
No, it was actually it made the papers. But anyway, moving on.
But yeah, so I think those are the options, right? So we've got the option of working for a company, which a lot of people are doing and seems to work. Lots of people do it. It seems fairly popular. Being self-employed and just choosing your own gig, being your own man, being the wandering minstrel amongst companies and delivering stuff for everyone, a freelance or a contractor, and then running your own company. Is there any other things that we've missed? Being a consultant, I guess?
Frankly, you could drop out completely and just become a bum.
Right.
But I don't think that we can really speak to that in any great detail.
Yet. Give us another few weeks, and then there's going to be the Rob and Mark's podcast of being a bum. It's like, which
coming to
alcohol
you from a park bench somewhere. No, I think that's it. I mean, within each of those, there are infinite subtleties. I mean, I've just come from a kind of 4-year stint of not only it being my company, but it being kind of a startup environment.
Oh, right.
And
of course, that's the other one, the startup, right?
That brings different challenges. It's still your own company, but it's not like, oh, we're just delivering services. You're trying to build a thing, and that throws an awful lot of these pain points into very sharp relief.
Right.
Certainly when it comes to recruitment and kind of maintaining cash flow and large quantities of lists. But it is still fundamentally, it's the same basic thing, right? You're just building something to sell rather than selling your ability to build.
That's a beautiful quote. We're going to put that on the banner of the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Unfortunately, the IP belongs to the company I currently work for. So
right. Okay.
No,
right.
It doesn't.
But anything you come up, anything you say belongs to the company you work for.
I mean, there is, I suppose, one thing that this kind of puts me in mind of building things and selling them rather than the other thing is a lot of freelance and even freelance teams, when they kind of get together and get to a certain size, start with the best of intentions. And you said, before about licensing the output, but not necessarily the tools. And they're like, yeah, well, we're going to be freelance, so we can totally build a whole bunch of cool stuff. And the one thing that I have found is, unless you're explicitly focusing on building that stuff, it can be really, really hard to do. Because you've still got to balance it with actually money that work that pays money. So you might luck out and get into a situation where you can build out some tooling or some frameworks. But certainly, the last couple of times that I've spoken to people where they've had like an internal company side project, it's like a micro startup. And those are nearly always destined to fail because they aren't making as much money as just selling time by the hour or picking up that juicy 6-month contract.
It becomes very tempting, right? So as you say, it's a juicy 6-month contract that you're now going to show off your product. One of the areas that I've really been looking into recently is game development, and that's exactly that. That is like, we're trying to make a game, but somehow you have to keep money coming in. And you don't want to shove that because that's the whole goal of you having a indie game studio, right? Is to deliver that, is to make that game. So I've been trying to learn more about the patterns of how indie game studios get their funding before a publisher comes in and rescues them or lends them some money to publish their game. A lot of the stuff that has come out of that is, for example, some game studios do architectural previs or visualization of buildings and things like that I never realized. They're obviously hand in hand, but I never realized that you'd be doing that. And also helping other game development companies. So they freelance on on a bigger game and then come back to do their own game, right? But I can see that the temptation of like, wow, I've just done freelance on this game. I'm earning the big bucks, but we now need to bring it back to the little indie dev so that you can feed yourself ramen for the next 2 years to get your product out of the way. But I guess that's the same with startup, right? Because you're focusing on the product. And, unless you get venture capital, which is much more common in the US.
Well, that is another topic for a whole different podcast. There you
got three topics.
How I survived working for a VC-funded startup. I did survive.
Well, you're here.
It was touch and go.
Awesome. I've got a few little things. I don't know. You don't go to conferences, do you?
I do. Okay. So, in context, I was quite happily going to conferences, doing the whole thing. Then, 4 years worth of startup, and it's one of the first things that falls by the wayside,
right?
Because being in Jersey, it's not like I can just, even in the UK, just pop up a motorway. It's a flight and a hotel.
I'm kind of used to that though. But hey.
Yeah, it's just, I suppose it's time and what have you and focus
Right.
and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I basically haven't really been much of anywhere for about the past 3 years, which is going to change this year. I have every intention of returning and heading off to slightly more interesting places and meeting some new people.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to try and invite you, get you to go to a conference in October, CF Camp, see if we can go there and camp out as a Localhost podcast on site or something.
CF Camp is very much on the list.
Because it's closer to you.
Yeah, it's really easy to get to.
It's Munich.
It's like a direct flight.
Yeah.
Of
course.
Drive it in 3 hours.
Right, so maybe not, but CF Camp don't even know we're coming. But hey, we're coming.
We're coming for you, CF Camp.
So I went to a really great little conference in Plymouth last week. Yeah. Week before last, which is fantastic. It's a one-day conference, but 3 interesting tracks. It was at the University of Plymouth. It's called a Future Sync Conference. Had loads of great speakers. One of them, Christian Hellman from Microsoft, who's a fantastic speaker. He did the keynote. But it had 3 tracks. One which was software design and development. Okay, we kind of know about that stuff. But the other one was education and entrepreneurship and business innovation. So it had a wide range of people there, which I found really interesting for a conference. And the tech talks, the software development and design and development, actually were really broad, because you had people talking about Agile, for example, then VR, and then various other things such as color theory and in games. So it was beautiful, wide range of stuff, and the students were also demonstrating all the game development skills right next to it. So it was in a exhibition of all the, I think, end of year projects, I guess. And it was like, wow, this is mind blowing. Instead of just sitting there talking about CSS, or just sitting there talking about very narrow focus, laser narrow focus in technology, which is what I'm used to about in a lot of conferences. It has such a breadth to it. So you're standing there next to educators that are trying to do STEM in schools and trying to educate kids and to getting into technology. What are they going to type on in the future? They're going to be banging on iPads and not know what a mechanical keyboard is all about. Poor little buggers. So it was a really great conference, and we've got some other ones coming up next month, which I'm trying to sell you on, which is a full stack conference as well. That's going to be at CodeNode at Skills Matter on the 12th and 14th of July, which is as the name says, is there's actually a half stack conference, which I love the name of it, because there's a full stack which goes from the front end to the back end, and you got a half stack that just does the front end, which I think that one's in October. And we got
can we get the other half stack?
The other half stack.
It deals with the back end. It's just, that's it.
Yeah.
Just doing server and API.
Server and API. Yeah, no, but there's plenty of those, right? So there's CF Objective, I guess, which is happening in DC, which got renamed from Dev Objective back to CF Objective, putting the Cold Fusion back into development. It's happening in the 20th and 23rd of July. So, and of course CF Camp, that's happening in October in Munich. So I think we're going to be at most of those. I'm going to be at Full Stack, CF Objective, and CF Camp anyway. And hopefully we can tempt you to come over to CF Camp, at least.
I think it would be a good start. I mean, I would make it over to Full Stack, but unfortunately we're off on the big family holiday.
You know what's happening at the same time as Full Stack, which really annoys me, is Develop, which is a game conference down in Brighton. And I was like, I could go one round the corner, or I could go one in Brighton and have fun down there. And So, oh well. But this happens. But so we didn't get any feedback from the last one. I got good feedback. People saying those are good things, and a few links to the podcast. But no one's told us that we're completely wrong. So we must be completely right.
Yeah, we're obviously we're winning.
Yeah, we're winning.
We know all the things.
Exactly.
But no, on a serious note, if you have listened to this, disagree, agree, whatever, get in touch. We like to hear from you. And it's not just, a shameless requirement for self-validation.
No, it is. It is. Come on, just tell us how great we are. What we have to do is like and review. Subscribe and review. What is it? Whatever the YouTube says, it's like and subscribe.
Yeah, do that.
Do that. Why don't you give us a good
where can
review?
they do that?
They can do that. Well, they can like and subscribe us on YouTube whenever we put this onto YouTube. They should go to iTunes because everyone needs good reviews for iTunes. If you put give us a 5-star review, even if you didn't like us, just press a 5. What have you got to lose? And also,
it costs you nothing, people. Costs you nothing.
Come on, it's just a click. And you can just email us at show@localhost.fm. You can send us a tweet, send us a DM, tell us what you like, what you don't like. We'll put up some polls or something at localhostfm. And of course, you can just go to our website and look at our beautiful faces there, and http localhost.fm.